Welcome to Paskvan Podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps this channel. For generations, Hessdalen Valley in central Norway was really just remote, a place defined by those long, dark winters, predictable seasons, and almost zero historical footprint. The only lights you'd expect to see were stars, maybe the aurora.
That's right. Just quiet.
But we're about to explore how, really, in just a few short years, this quiet corner of the Earth became, famous worldwide for something. Something truly baffling, phenomena that seem to defy our basic scientific understanding. We're looking into the riddle of Norway's UFO Valley.
And that contrast you mentioned, it's absolutely central to this whole story. Hessdalen, it's tucked away deep between these steep mountains. The community is just tied to the valley floor, the seasons.
Completely anonymous.
Totally anonymous, yeah. Untouched by global events or intrigue. And it's this setting, this deep stillness that made the event starting in the early 80s so profoundly weird and unsettling. It turned a local curiosity into a genuine international mystery.
So this shift from obscurity to this anomaly, it sounds like it happened incredibly fast. The silence was broken, you said, not by sound, but by this strange glow. When did this first wave really kick off? And how did people realize, this wasn't just some weird weather?
Well, the first really consistent wave of sightings started late in 1981. It built up quickly through 82 and then really hit a peak intensity right through 1983.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and these were people who lived under those Norwegian skies their whole lives. Suddenly, they're seeing lights that just didn't fit anything they knew. They weren't helicopters way off in the distance, not weather balloons, definitely not satellites twinkling.
Right, they know those.
Yeah.
So what were people actually seeing? What did these lights look like?
Most often, they were described as these brilliant, sort of self-contained orbs. And crucially, the color wasn't static, it changed.
Oh.
Yeah, they could flare up like an intense magnesium white, really lighting up the landscape, or they might glow this deep red, sometimes yellow, casting these weird shifting colors across the snow and the mountains. But the thing that really set them apart, the thing that immediately told everyone something profound was happening, was the movement.
The movement, okay.
These lights would often just float, drift slowly, maybe seem aimless, and then suddenly they'd execute these instantaneous changes in speed and direction, things that just defied momentum, inertia, physics, basically.
Now, one thing that makes the Hessdalen case stand out compared to maybe other UFO hotspots is the witnesses, right? The consistency. We're not talking about one or two scattered reports.
No, absolutely not. We're talking about farmers, families, people who lived and worked in that valley their whole lives, people really grounded in their day-to-day reality. And the accounts coming in were, almost identical. It didn't matter where you were standing in the valley, which pretty much rules out, localized hallucinations or some kind of mass delusion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can we talk about some specific examples? I know the source material mentioned some really striking encounters.
Definitely. Let's bring it to life. Take the farmer you mentioned earlier, checking his animals in the freezing cold.
Right, that one really stuck with me. It feels so immediate.
Exactly. So picture it. Dark, isolated field, middle of a winter night. He sees this glowing sphere, perfect sphere, hovering maybe 30 feet off the ground.
Just hanging there?
Just hanging there. And it's lighting up the snow underneath it in this sharp, perfect circle. A beacon in the dark. He said he was just watching it, frozen, noting how steady it was. And then, no warning, no sound. It just vanished.
Vanished how? Faded out.
No, not faded. Accelerated. Straight up and away. He used the phrase breathtaking speed, that instant acceleration. It's a recurring theme, and frankly, a terrifying one.
And it wasn't just passive observation, right? There were accounts suggesting the lights were almost interacting, like with tourists driving nearby.
Yes, those reports are particularly unsettling. You had travelers recounting these lights, seeming to pace their cars along lonely stretches of road, keeping a steady distance, then suddenly peeling off and disappearing into the mountains.
Like they were watching.
It certainly felt like it to the witnesses, not just passive phenomena. And then you had families standing right outside their houses describing seeing multiple orbs, not just one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, performing what they called the silent coordinated choreography in the sky, weaving around each other with real precision. It suggests either incredibly complex physics we don't understand or, intentional control.
The sheer number of these sightings must have just shattered any sense of normal life there. If you go from maybe one weird light story to seeing things several times a week.
Exactly. By 1982, you just couldn't ignore it anymore. Sometimes multiple distinct sightings across the valley in 1 week. occasionally several documented events on the same night.
That constant presence.
It forced the issue. It created this deep, lingering sense of unease in this usually quiet place. It was a real shift. The mystery wasn't just stories anymore. It felt like a physical, present reality that needed explaining.
Yeah.
And that's what pushed Hessdalen onto the national and then the global stage.
So once that initial shock maybe wore off a bit, people had to try and describe what they were seeing, right?
Yeah.
And that led to this, you said, almost poetic mix of science terms and emotional words, trying to pin down the light's identity.
Yeah, the language they used really shows how confused everyone was. They were dealing with something that didn't fit neatly into any known box. Some people, trying to be rational, used science-ize terms, describing them as focused orbs of plasma, suggesting contain super hot gas.
Right, trying to find a category.
But then the descriptions would shift. People saying the lights looked alive or seemed intelligent, even almost playful in how they moved. That identity crisis is key. Was this just raw physics gone wild, or was there some kind of guidance behind it?
Let's drill down on the movements themselves. Because if you think about known things like ball lightning or atmospheric reflections, their behavior is dictated by gravity, wind, inertia. But the movements here, they seem to be the main argument against any standard explanation.
That's absolutely right. The motions recorded were, well, extreme and often contradictory. First, they could just stop, hover completely motionless for long stretches, totally ignoring gravity.
Just hang in there.
Yep. Second, the speed. Witnesses, and later the instruments, clocked instances where these lights shot from one end of the valley to the other in mere seconds. That implies instant acceleration from 0 to, well, incredible speeds. A maneuver that should create crushing G-forces if it was a solid object with mass. Yet the change was described as smooth, seamless.
And you mentioned earlier they weren't always solid looking. They seemed almost biological.
They did, and this is one of the really weird parts. People often reported the orbs pulsating, expanding and contracting, almost like they were breathing or somehow organic.
Breathing lights.
And then there are the accounts of splitting and merging. A single orb would suddenly divide into two separate, distinct spheres. They'd fly around independently, then smoothly merge back into one unit again.
That's really hard to explain with conventional physics, or even plasma.
Exactly. It challenges our basic understanding of physical objects or even simple energy fields. How does that happen?
And there was that specific account, wasn't there, of a light coming down really low, almost treetop level, then shooting straight up.
Precisely. Skimming the trees, then accelerating vertically, straight up. If that was any known aircraft, think about the air displacement, the noise, the energy needed for that vertical jump. It would be immense and leave traces.
Which brings us to the sensory stuff. Maybe the most unsettling part. You'd expect extreme movement to mean extreme noise, a sonic boom, engine roar, or something. But mostly, silence.
Eerie silence. That's often the signature of this mystery. It just rules out any known propulsion that works by pushing air around.
But not always silent.
Not uniformly, no. In some cases, witnesses did report hearing a distinct low sound, a faint hum as the orb passed close by, and maybe even more interesting, some described feeling something physical.
Feeling. Like what?
Like a strong, unnerving vibration deep in their chest. Or even a weird, localized, tingling, almost magnetic feeling. It suggests maybe a powerful transfer of low-frequency energy or some kind of electromagnetic effect rather than sound from a typical engine.
So by 1983, you've got all this testimony piling up, the impossible moves, the physical sensations, the sheer consistency. It just became impossible for authorities to brush it off, right? This local oddity suddenly became a global headline.
Oh, the valley was swamped. International journalists, TV crews, scientists, researchers, they all descended on Hessdalen. And crucially, the lights were actually caught on film and video.
That's a big difference from older UFO stories.
Huge difference. Unlike reports relying just on maybe shaky eyewitness accounts, the Hessdalen lights were confirmed. They were objectively real, visible, recordable things. Science could finally get its hands dirty. The question shifted from, are they real, to, okay, what are they and how on earth did they do that?
So there was this clear need for a proper investigation. You mentioned local officials facing a crisis of credibility. They had to address the fear and confusion.
Yeah.
And Hessdalen, because the sightings were so consistent and frequent, it was like the perfect natural laboratory.
Exactly. It was an unparalleled opportunity. Most strange aerial sightings are scattered, random places, random times. Hessdalen was predictable in its unpredictability. So in 1983, scientists from Norway, including people from the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment, teamed up with international colleagues. they launched Project Hessdalen.
Yep.
They came in with a very specific aim: apply the absolute toughest scientific scrutiny they could manage to this mystery. This wasn't just idle curiosity, it was a serious attempt to catalog, understand, maybe even contain this unknown using hard science.
What kind of tools did they bring? Let's go beyond just listing gadgets. How are these instruments meant to analyze something that might not even play by the rules of being a solid object?
Right. Well, they had the standard optical gear, obviously. High-res cameras, video cameras, trying to capture visual details, especially during movement. But the real heavy hitters were designed to sense what you couldn't necessarily see.
Okay, like what?
First, radar systems. Absolutely essential. They weren't just trying to see if the lights were there, but if they had substance, mass.
Right. Did they reflect radar beams?
Exactly. If the radar beams bounced back, it meant there was a physical structured object there, like a plane or a drone. But if the camera saw a glowing orb and the radar saw absolutely nothing, well, then you've got something that defies conventional definitions.
A physical ghost, almost. Okay, what else? Energy detection.
Yes, the magnetometers were vital. These instruments are super sensitive. They measure tiny little wiggles and shifts in the Earth's local magnetic field. The thinking was, if these lights were generating huge amounts of energy or moving at crazy speeds or using some kind of exotic propulsion, they'd almost certainly mess with the local magnetic field as they went by. If you could record those magnetic spikes at the exact same time as a visual sighting, that's a massive clue.
Makes sense. And the most sophisticated tool for analyzing the light itself was the spectrograph, right?
Sure.
Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah.
How does that work, and what were they hoping it would tell them about what these lights were made of?
Sure. Think of a spectrograph basically like a high-tech prism hooked up to a camera. It takes the light coming from the object and splits it into its fundamental wavelengths as a unique spectral signature, like a fingerprint made of light. Every element, whether it's burning magnesium or hydrogen gas or superheated plasma, gives off a very specific pattern of light wavelengths. By analyzing that pattern, that signature, scientists hope to figure out the exact chemical or energy source of the glow. Were they seeing known atmospheric chemicals acting weirdly? Ionized metal dust from the mining history? Or something completely new, completely unidentifiable?
So for weeks, they meticulously gathered data, applying hard physics to this.
Enigma. Painstakingly, yes.
And the results, not exactly clear-cut, where they confirmed the phenomenon was real, but seemed to introduce even more contradictions.
Yeah.
The data started fighting itself.
That's a perfect description. The confirmation part was instant. Yes, the lights were undeniably real, caught visually multiple times on different camera systems, no question. But the contradictions were just as immediate and just as profound, starting with that radar data about mass.
Right, let's talk about that radar data again. What do those conflicting readings really imply?
It was bafflingly inconsistent. In some documented cases, the radar got a clear, solid return. Ping. Indicating a physical object reflecting radar waves just like an aircraft or a solid drone would.
Okay, so sometimes solid.
But then, in other cases, at the same time, the light was clearly visible to the eye, bright on the video feed. The radar screen was completely blank. Nothing. The lights appeared ghost-like to instruments, as some reports put it.
Wow.
It suggests something physical that could either shift its state
Right.
or somehow make itself invisible to electronic detection. That capability is just fundamentally weird. It's not how things are supposed to work in our physics.
A physical object that can turn its physical signature on and off, that's more than just an anomaly. That hints we're missing something fundamental about matter or energy. Did the energy readings provide any more clarity?
They offered clues, definitely, but not a final answer. The magnetometers often did record strange, strong fluctuations right when the lights were present and moving. That confirmed these things were generating, or at least interacting with, powerful electromagnetic fields.
Okay, so something energetic was happening.
Yes. And the spectrographs hinted at plasma, or ionized gas, being involved, which makes sense for the brilliant, pulsating glow.
But it wasn't a perfect match for plasma, was it?
No, and that's the frustration. The light signature suggested plasma, but it didn't perfectly match the fingerprint of any single known source of plasma. It was like a complex mix of emission lines that you couldn't just point to and say, that's burning X or that's ionized Y.
So a complicated chemical fingerprint, both familiar and alien.
Exactly. The data was a partial solution, a strong clue pointing towards energetic processes, but not the neat answer you could just write down and close the case file on.
Realizing that these short, intense projects couldn't really capture something so unpredictable, The research approach had to change, right? It became more of a long-term commitment.
Precisely. You can't schedule an anomaly.
Huh.
So the solution to unpredictability is just constant watching. In 1998, researchers set up the Permanent Hessdalen Automatic Measurement Station, the AMS. This was a big step.
An observatory for weird lights.
Pretty much. It was installed high up on a mountainside, kitted out with continuous round-the-clock surveillance gear, multiple cameras, better radar, sophisticated atmospheric sensors.
Tell us more about this AMS. Maintaining high-tech gear in that remote, harsh Norwegian environment for decades. That sounds incredibly challenging.
Oh, it's a remarkable setup. The whole point of the AMS was twofold. First, get away from relying solely on human eyewitness reports, which can be subjective. Second, standardize the data collection using calibrated instruments, 24/7.
So it's always watching.
Always watching. It even used custom software designed to automatically flag anything unusual, visually or on radar. And yeah, think about keeping sensitive electronics running year-round through extreme cold, blizzards, fog. It's a huge logistical feat, but it's been incredibly successful. It's recorded hundreds of confirmed, validated events over the last 25 years or so.
So the AMS really cements the whole thing, doesn't it? It takes the mystery beyond anecdotes and gives it a solid, measurable data set. It's the backbone for decades of study now, keeping the anomaly relevant.
It absolutely solidifies Hessdalen's place in the scientific conversation. The AMS data provides those crucial metrics, speed, trajectory, magnetic changes that let you clearly distinguish these events from, say, planes, meteors, or weird weather. It confirms this is a genuine, ongoing anomaly that deserves serious investigation.
Which brings us to the big puzzle. We have decades of high-quality instrument-backed data, yet no single theory explains all of it. You called Hessdalen a mosaic where every potential explanation fits one piece but gets contradicted by another.
That's the inescapable reality of it. You pick any explanation, natural, chemical, even the more exotic ones, and it just slams into a wall of contradictory data eventually. Let's start with the most common natural idea, plasma.
Right. Plasma is superheated, ionized gas. As you said, it fits the look, the glowing orbs, the shifting shapes, the pulsating.
The plasma idea definitely has weight. The spectrograph data gives it some support, suggesting ionized gases are involved. Plasma could explain the light, the sort of amorphous quality. But here's the big problem, the weakness.
Right.
Longevity and movement. Plasma fields just floating in the open air. They should dissipate fast, like seconds fast. But many Hessdalen lights hang around for minutes. And even more critically, plasma should get blown around by the wind, affected by air currents. Yet these orbs pull off sudden, sharp accelerations, instant direction changes that seem completely unaffected by wind. If it is plasma, it's behaving like powered plasma, like self-contained, intelligently moving plasma, which isn't how normal plasma works.
Okay, so if it's probably not just a self-sustaining gas cloud, maybe the energy comes from the ground itself. That leads to the geological idea, the piezoelectric effect.
Yeah, this one's attractive because it neatly ties the phenomenon to the specific place. We know the valley floor in Hessdalen is rich in quartz crystals, other conductive minerals. The piezoelectric effect is basically where mechanical stress, like pressure from shifting rocks deep underground or even temperature changes, makes these crystals generate electricity.
Squeezing rocks makes light.
In simple terms, yeah. The theory suggests this geological stress releases electrical charges into the air, which then manifest as these lights.
And this isn't just a Hessdalen theory, right? It's used to explain other weird lights around the world.
Absolutely. It's a key theory for the Marfa lights in Texas, the Brown Mountain lights in North Carolina. It suggests maybe there's this global pattern of Earth lights linked to geology. But its fit for Hessdalen isn't perfect either.
Why not?
Because geological stress usually creates brief sparks, like little lightning flashes or maybe short arcs of light. It doesn't really explain sustained, structured orbs that can just hang there gracefully for minutes, split into two, and then zip off with controlled precision. That intelligent-seeming movement, recorded by the AMS, really pushes the piezoelectric theory.
Okay, so geology is maybe part of the picture, but not the whole story. What about the air itself and the valley's history? Could it be some kind of exotic chemical reaction?
Combustion.
That's another hypothesis. Sort of like a localized chemistry experiment happening in the atmosphere. Hessdalen does have a mining history, and some people suggest there are deposits of rare metallic elements in the soil or rock.
Right.
So it's plausible, perhaps, that unusual reactions between metallic dust, water vapor, maybe triggered by specific weather conditions, pyrophoric reactions, things that ignite spontaneously in air, could create these temporary glows. It could certainly explain the deep red and yellow colors people saw.
But again, The movement. That seems to be the recurring problem for these natural theories.
It really is. Chemistry might explain the color, maybe the temporary glow, but it completely fails the motion test. How does simple chemical burning sustain itself for minutes? And more importantly, how does it propel itself across the valley at high speed with those precise maneuvers the AMS tracked? Combustion is messy, uncontrolled. The Hessdalen lights look controlled.
So when all the usual suspects, gas, geology, chemistry, struggle to explain that controlled, rapid movement, the conversation inevitably shifts towards the more exotic explanations. For a lot of people, that movement alone screams intelligence, which points towards the extraterrestrial craft idea.
Yeah, for people who lean towards that hypothesis, Hessdalen is almost Exhibit A. The way these lights hover silently, dart around instantly, accelerate without warning. It matches perfectly with global reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, things that seem intelligently controlled and use technology beyond ours.
Especially beyond the known tech of the 1980s.
Or arguably even today. That level of maneuverability just seems beyond conventional aircraft.
So if the movement is the strongest point for the intelligent craft idea, what's the scientific weakness? Why haven't researchers just concluded, okay, it's ET?
The main issue is often the form they take. As we discussed, these lights frequently show up visually and sometimes on radar as these fuzzy orbs, glowing spheres, fields of energy, not usually as clear, solid, metallic-looking craft like you might picture.
Right, not like a classic flying saucer shape necessarily.
Not always, no. So if they are intelligent craft, they're operating in a way that kind of defies our assumptions about engineering. Maybe craft doesn't always mean metal ship. And they don't leave behind the usual traces, no exhaust, no wreckage, no detectable debris. It makes them incredibly hard to pin down physically.
We should probably touch on the really unconventional ideas too. The ones that are pretty much outside scientific measurement, like portals or interdimensional windows.
Well, those ideas really only gain traction because the physical evidence is so weird and contradictory. The portal idea tries to explain things appearing and vanishing instantly, suggesting they're not just moving through our 3D space normally.
Right.
And the other one you hear, especially given the Cold War context of the 80s, is secret military technology. Maybe in Norway or someone else was testing advanced plasma weapons or new drone propulsion systems. It's tempting. But decades have passed, and there's never been a single credible leak, document, or confession linking Hessdalen to any known military project. So it remains pure speculation.
It really seems like the defining feature of Hessdalen is that it just endures.
Yeah.
It's still a living riddle. Data keeps coming in, it gets confirmed, but it remains perpetually unexplained.
And that leads us straight into its lasting significance. This mystery is now fundamentally part of the valley's identity. Hessdalen went from being this anonymous farming place to an international landmark known for science and the unknown.
The lights basically created a whole new economy for a place that would otherwise be pretty isolated.
Absolutely. They drive tourism, media interest, the chance to maybe witness a genuine scientific anomaly, something real that science can't fully explain yet, that draws people from all over the globe. They hold regular conferences there now.
Bringing together different experts.
Yeah, plasma physicists, geologists, engineers, students, plus dedicated enthusiasts. It keeps the phenomenon alive, culturally and scientifically, even though the big intense swarm of sightings from the 80s has died down quite a bit.
And it connects Hessdalen to this bigger global picture of mysterious lights, doesn't it? Suggesting whatever's happening there isn't totally unique.
Yes, we really have to look at Hessdalen alongside its global cousins. It helps show this type of anomaly isn't just a one-off Norwegian thing. You see incredibly similar reports elsewhere.
Like where?
Well, for instance, the Marfa lights out in Texas. Glowing orbs, weird, unpredictable movements, similar colors reported white, red, yellow. Or the Brown Mountain lights in North Carolina, mysterious lights seen over the ridges there, consistently reported since way back in the 19th century, often blamed on geology but still debated.
Wow, okay.
And then you have the eerie min lights in the Australian outback, these glowing orbs that seem to follow people traveling across those vast, empty plains.
So the fact that these similar mysteries exist elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
what does that tell us?
It's profoundly significant. It suggests Hessdale isn't just some weird fluke. It might be part of a larger, maybe winter-wide pattern of phenomena that just resist easy scientific explanation. It implies that maybe our planet itself, under very specific, maybe rare combinations of geology, atmosphere, electromagnetic conditions, can actually generate these sustained weird lights that we just don't have a category for yet. Hessdalen is important because it was one of the first places where these lights were really captured and studied seriously by mainstream science, moving the discussion beyond just stories towards actual measurement.
And the mystery is ongoing. That feels crucial. The intense peak of the early 80s might be over, but the lights haven't completely stopped. They still show up often enough to keep the puzzle active. And the AMS, that automatic measurement station, is still up there, silently watching, logging every flicker. It ensures Hessdalen remains a current event, not just history.
And that brings us to the ultimate legacy. Decades on, it's not just about figuring out what the lights are, it's about what they represent. They're this powerful case study in scientific humility.
Humility, how so?
Well, despite our incredibly advanced technology, our digital world, our deep understanding of physics, these lights still burn just outside the reach of our certainty. They prove that even right here, in our own atmosphere, things can happen that force us to admit the limits of what we currently know.
A real, physical, measurable phenomenon that somehow exists in this strange gray area. Between being scientifically confirmed as real, yet remaining utterly extraordinary and unexplained. That really is the enduring riddle of Norway's UFO Valley.
So here's the thought to leave you with. If the data we have, the inconsistent radar, the precise high-speed moves, that unique light signature, if it consistently points away from simple geology and away from conventional human tech, shouldn't we maybe start thinking about adjusting our fundamental understanding of how energy and matter can interact right here in our own atmosphere? What other secrets might be waiting out there, maybe above another quiet valley somewhere, just defying our attempts to classify them because we simply haven't invented the right box to put them in yet?
Something profound to consider indeed, especially the next time you find yourself looking up at the night sky. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the Hessdalen Lights.